If you don't own clothes, then disregard this tip. I highly recommend not walking around naked and probably picking up some clothes.
Hey there, my handsome and pretty little Cobras, and welcome back to the Cobras nest. For those who are new, my name is Mignon Cobra and I make minimalism videos. So today's minimalism video is going to be an anti-consumerism one. I'm going to be sharing with you guys 15 low buy tips that have really helped me out in the past, and I want to share that with you guys if that is something that you are on. So without further ado, let's just get into the video. Let's get it, let's go. Ooh. So I'm making this video because recently, as you guys know, I'm on a 1-year break of minimalism, which means I've given myself full permission to be able to buy whatever I want. And I don't know if that was necessarily the greatest of ideas, but it's something I needed for my soul. And I've kind of entered the world of consumerism. It kind of gave me a good perspective on like the consumerist world that I had left behind when I left behind the rat race. And I'm just like, wow, it's tough to navigate. And I kind of had to give myself some constraints because I was kind of going overboard a little bit. I was spending my money on everything that I wanted, and I don't think it's necessarily healthy. I figured I would make these 15 points that have really helped me out in these last couple of weeks, I would say. And I realized that the things that were helping me out a lot in my current consumerist habits in check were actually stolen from my low buy habits. These are not tips for makeup rehab. These are just general shopping tips. Okay, and number 1, stay out of the store. So I'm going to assume with this tip that you probably already own clothes. If push comes to shove, you really are struggling with your addiction, as I was with makeup. It got to a point where I couldn't go to the store anymore, and I didn't go to the Sephora store for I think like a year. So I think that if you probably already own clothes, I'm gonna assume that if you're watching this video, if you're watching YouTube, you probably own clothes enough to like last you a week so that you could technically never go back to the store. If you don't own clothes, then disregard this tip. I highly recommend not walking around naked and probably picking up some clothes. So I would recommend whatever it is that you are struggling with buying too much of, I would recommend not going into those particular shops. If it's clothes, probably avoid your favorite clothes shops. I can go into Sephora now and I don't feel that same deep compulsiveness to buy stuff the way that I used to before I embarked on a full 1-year no buy. It took me about an entire year to get that out of my system and change my perspective on the shopping relationship I had with that particular, I guess, category of stuff. Okay, number 2, just like staying out of the regular stores, I also recommend staying out of the online stores and deleting whatever app that may be. So for me, I deleted the Sephora app off my phone. I also deleted the Poya app off my phone for my Asian subscribers. You guys know that's a makeup store. For me, I realized that when I had access to these things, there's only so much willpower you have. You know, you can tell yourself I'm just window shopping, which is valid. You can definitely window shop. I'm not saying don't. But for me, what I noticed was that I would start to kind of crave the things that I knew existed. It got to the point where I realized that like if I didn't know that it existed because I wasn't looking at the app and it wasn't on my phone, can't lust for what I don't know exists. So ignorance is bliss. So it definitely helped me a lot in the beginning, helping curb my appetite. So yeah, I highly recommend getting rid of it till you get a better handle on your shopping. Okay, number 3, deleting your favorite Instagrammers, or even just deleting the app entirely. Recently, I've been toying with the idea that maybe I should delete my Instagram. It's gotten to the point where my feed is so cluttered with like the algorithm specific items. Like it knows me so well. It's really freaky, and it just constantly bombards me with things that I really want. And like, I'm only human. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you like I'm a perfect minimalist. For me, I had to delete several Instagrammers that were into makeup, which I love them, but I had to delete them. I also had to delete a lot of my favorite Korean minimalists. They were showing me beautiful minimalist junk, the clear white bowl, or like the beautiful cutlery, and it just got to the point where it's like, this is anti-minimalism. It's just making me want so many things, and it's all under the guise of being a good minimalist, like an aesthetic minimalist. And you know, I like pretty things, so I kept getting sucked in. So I got rid of them for about a year, and then after a year, those that I still could remember, I brought them back into my life, and I'm able to look at the content without feeling the same intense feeling of like, oh, I want it, or being as heavily influenced. And there's some actually I never went back to because I just realized that it was just more triggering than it was inspiring. Okay, number 4, picking up a slower form of consumption instead of shopping, because I think everything you can find a way to hyper consume in it. Like the tips that I'm going to share is reading and gardening. I'm sure you can spend a pretty penny on books and on gardening tools. So the reason that I mention a slower form of consumption is that like I don't think plants grow overnight in the same way that you can blow your credit card on the computer. And I think same thing with reading. Shopping for books is different from reading. Most people are not able to blow through several books a night the same way you can blow through buying several books a night. For me, that's what I did during my low buy for makeup. I started reading more Kindle books, started reading more, just educating myself more. I picked up languages. I started learning Korean. For me, I haven't found a sustainable way to never not consume. I feel it's too restrictive, so I just
switch to something a little bit more sustainable. Okay, and number 5, learn to produce over consume. This is one that is commonly said in the minimalism community, so I think that this one isn't anything new if you're probably a viewer of these type of channels. Everyone talks about,
produce over consume, and I
think that it is a helpful tip. I know that I had one subscriber once tell me like that's very privileged to say that. Not everybody has access to a computer, not everybody has access to being able to produce a book, produce a YouTube video, produce whatever it is. And so I just give this tip with hopes that maybe it can inspire you to the best of your abilities within your means to be able to produce and whatever is viable for you. It doesn't have to be produced on like mass media level. I think just shifting gears from that mindset that like your only function in life is to consume what other people have created. You too are a valuable human being. You too have a lot to contribute. So for me, that definitely helped shift my mentality. Before I started a YouTube channel, I had a Wattpad, so I used to write novels. So I think that you don't need to be in, at least I feel, in the most privileged places to be able to produce. When you start producing, there's no limit to how much you can produce, but like unless you're a multi-millionaire, there's a limit to how much you can consume. Okay, number 6, do the shadow work. Understand why you want it. So like that burning desire you get inside when you really want something, like it feels like you're gonna die if you don't get it. Maybe that's just a me problem, but I learned from myself was learning to do the shadow work. There's a lot of deep-rooted stuff as to why you want certain items, assuming it's not food, and even some food, because I used to have an eating disorder. I know some of it comes from a place of like shadow work too. So if you're wondering what shadow work means, it means like doing that like emotional work where you write down your thoughts, like why you do certain things. Does it come from like a subconscious level? Like if you dig deep enough, you start to realize the underlying paradigm that drives your actions. An arbitrary example, maybe the reason that you like buying Nike is because you weren't a very good athlete in school. It's like that hard stuff that we don't want to admit to others, let alone to ourselves. So for me, I did a lot of shadow work. Why I wore makeup. For me, I was kind of insecure growing up and I was made fun of for my weight. And then once I became really pretty, once I started to behave and act like societal conventional norms of Western beauty, my life did get better, and it just kind of reinforced this notion that beauty is the most important thing. And so that's why I got really obsessed with makeup. So once I did that shadow work, it really helped a lot with my makeup no buying. So I'm kind of doing that shadow work now with like clothes and my identity and my growing up like in poverty to kind of help understand what drives some of my purchasing behavior. Because I'm not saying if you've done shadow work you can't shop anymore. That's not what I'm just saying. I'm just saying that like being aware helps a lot. Okay, number 7, just have one wish list, don't have multiples. So when I'm a lot more stricter, I keep the list to 3 items. So for the previous couple years, all that was on my wish list was an iPhone, a MacBook, and I think like a Canada Goose jacket. And I was like, those are the big 3 ticket items, and other things I would cut from smaller purchases so I could save up money to buy those things. So as you guys have seen, I recently picked up a MacBook. I had bought the iPhone last year, but I didn't like the model, so I returned it. And I'll probably be picking up the Goose either this winter or next winter. So that's something that's really helped me a lot. Your items don't need to be so big ticketed, and your list doesn't necessarily need to be 3 items. But what I mentioned this tip in particular is because in comparison to how I used to shop before I became a minimalist was like I would have like a massive wish list with like 6 or 7 items, and I would have maybe like 3 or 4 wish lists, and I have wish lists for this store and that store, and it wasn't necessarily the healthiest way to go about consumption. So I've kind of narrowed it down in true minimalism fashion. I don't restrict, instead I'm just a lot more intentional, and I ask myself in a year what are the things that I really would like to buy. And I've also had small items on my wish list, so it's really up to you what you consider important for your wish list. So have one, don't have multiple. Okay, number 8, quit the storage item bullshit. This is a really funny one because this is actually one that I picked up from Kiyosaki. The way he phrased it was get rid of the nest and get rid of the pest, which is just like when you have storage items, you start to accumulate things because like you can store it in storage items. So I used to have a really big storage item addiction when I was younger. I used to love storage items. Will knows that like I would buy little boxes. I had a thing for buying little boxes to put little things inside the little boxes. I don't know, maybe it's a kid thing. I don't know what it is. Like it was weird. I really like storage items. So what I can recommend is to avoid collecting storage items. Okay, number 9, speaking of making things fit, I would recommend making it fit in a luggage. Make sure it fits your closet. Essentially, this tip is this idea that pick up all your clothes from everywhere around the house. I'll just use clothes as an example and put them in one place so you can kind of see how much you actually have and what's the magnitude of it instead of like scattering it around the house. I did that with my makeup. I didn't keep makeup, in a vanity, in the bathroom, in a makeup bag. I collected everything together, and now I do that, I keep everything together by category, ensuring that everything fits as it's supposed to. Your clothes should fit your closet, and that has really helped me a lot with making sure that everything fits and I don't go overboard. Is that gonna fit my closet? Is that gonna fit my luggage? And it helped a lot. Okay, number 10, tough love. Tell yourself no. I know that we all live in a society where it's always like,
Tell yourself yes and treat yourself.
and I do agree with that to a certain extent, but if you say that to everything, it almost loses its value. How are you really treating yourself if it's something that you do all the time? So learning to tell yourself no is a very tough love, but it's like a loving thing. I try to think of it as kind of like parenting yourself. You wouldn't tell your kid no to every toy he asked for in the store. But why do we do it to ourselves? And I know that I say this from a place of love because like I had trouble telling myself no. I would tell myself like saying no means like I'm being restrictive with myself. It's not healthy, but that's not necessarily true. You can tell yourself no and still love yourself. Okay, and number 11, buy only the best. This is one that I picked up from the life-changing magic of thinking big, which is buy twice as nice and twice as less. And I definitely agree with that point. A lot of items that I still have from my high school days that I still wear and still fit me and never pilled are probably the better quality items. I really couldn't afford them at the time, but I was bad with my money, so I still bought them anyway. And I guess it turned out to be like a not bad investment. I still have my 15-year-old clothes. I wouldn't recommend this tip. It's a rather stupid tip, but the results do still hold. If, I guess, to the best of your ability, then buy better if you can and don't buy as much, and it will probably be a better return on investment than buying a lot of crappy shirts. I'm wearing my Aritzia leggings right now, and the quality is just, it's on point. It isn't comparable to my Walmart pieces, which have fallen apart on me. Hey guys, sorry, I kind of needed to change the room a bit because my desk was driving me crazy. Number 12, don't buy cheap and mediocre items. In my mind, I felt like if I bought cheap items from like Miniso or the dollar store, I ended up spending more between buying all of the small pieces that I realized that it was just a lot better if I bought something good and it worked and it lasts. I bought 2 really bad mouses from Miniso that kept breaking on me. Each one was like 15 bucks. And if I had just bought a regular Logitech mouse, it would have been $30. So I ended up spending the same amount of money, except I had 2 bad mouses that would like phantom ghost on the screen. If you can afford to do so, try your best to not buy mediocre items. My friend said it well. She's like, cheap costs you more. All right, number 13, sales aren't the enemy. I actually do my best to take advantage of sales. I mean, they're gonna give you a sale anyway, so why pay full price? That's not to say that I intentionally buy things if it's on sale, and if it's good, then I won't, or I only shop from the sale section. I have made videos talking about that. I always shop from the entire store, and I never limit myself only buying things when it's on sale. I don't think that that's healthy or good either. You should definitely buy whatever you need to, and if it's on like full price, buy it, whatever. But what I'm just saying for me that I have found is that, I know this is really big in the minimalism community, it's like
Avoid sales. Sales are like getting you to spend money that you wouldn't have otherwise spent.
I say from the perspective of, I'm very regimented in what I need to buy, and if I can get it on sale, even better. So I guess it just really depends on how you want to use it. So for me, I do take advantage of sales. Okay, number 14, budgeting if it works for you. I remember there was a period of time where budgeting was actually working against me. I would find excuses to buy things because it was within a budget, that I found that I would kind of overspend the more that I tried to budget. I guess it's almost akin to calorie counting. The more I tried calorie counting, the more I would go over in my calories, because I'd be constantly thinking like,
The calories. I can afford these calories. I can't afford those calories.
So I found in the end that try budgeting, see if it works for you, which is something that I tried. I tried to see if budgeting worked for me, and I'm not that strict of a budgeter. So you're probably thinking, well, that just seems like you just spend all your money. I actually find I spend less the less I think about money. I actually ask myself when I purchase things from a perspective of utility, like, is this something that I actually like? Is this serving a function? Is this something that I think is beautiful? Is it like something I need? And I find that when I calculate my expenses at the end of the month, I tend to perform better when I've actually not budgeted, because my criterion for buying things are different. It's more like, will it fit my luggage? That already limits a lot of purchases. Not really a money thing, because little small purchases here and there will add up in the luggage, as opposed to, depending on your budget. Like, I don't know what kind of budget you guys are working with, so I can only speak for myself, but I could definitely buy a lot on my budget. So I have to find other criterions that are more sustainable for me than budgeting. I still do track every single expense that I do at the end of the month. So I am still technically budgeting, but I don't give myself allowances like, this is how much you're gonna spend and that's how much you're gonna spend. I don't do that. I'd rather do what I need to do, and then at the end of the month I see how I do and I start to see patterns, and so I can adjust accordingly for the following month. And number 15, I think a good one that I would ask myself is, what does it do for you? This is actually a tip that I grabbed from Will. It's not a tip that I came up with. There were times where I would like find something that I really liked and I would ask Will, ooh, what do you think of this? and he would ask me, well, what does it do for you? And it's more in the realm of wants, because I feel like we're talking about wants here. I think needs are easier to justify. I don't think we need a minimalism video on tracking your finances for your groceries. I think we all understand we need to eat. So we're strictly talking about wants, right? And Will would ask me, what does it do for you? Because, like, for example, I wanted a YSL perfume, and he's like, well, you can just get a perfume for like $10 from like American Eagle. Why does it have to be YSL, which is like $135, or maybe even $200 if you're here in Canada? $200 for a perfume is quite a bit of money. And I was like, well, it smells good. He's like, uh-huh. And I'm like, and it's YSL. He's like, uh-huh. And then I just started to run out of excuses. I was like, yeah, but like, look at the bottle. And he's like, okay. I'm looking at it. I'm like, yeah, don't you know how good that's gonna look on my Instagram feed? And he's like, for your Instagram feed, okay? And then I was like, yeah, people are gonna give me follows and likes. And then I realized, okay, right, so this is a validation thing. And I was like, okay, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here shaming anybody for their purchases. It's just understanding and asking yourself, what does the item do for you? And kind of being aware. So yeah, I hope that these low buy tips helped you, at the very least, have a smoother journey with your finances. And yeah, click down below. I have a lot more finance videos because I love to talk about money. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.